Hello friends and welcome. I'm Sarah Liz and I have two card projects for you today using some of the club kits from Spellbinders for January. So this is the die of the month, or the small die of the month. It's called Sitting Pretty and it's got some great big bold blooms. And then this one is the stencil of the month. This coordinates with the glimmer of the month. I don't have the glimmer, so we're going to use that big floral area to create a background for one of our cards, but there's some great greenery in there. I'll show you a picture of that later, completed with the glimmer. And then this embossing folder, it's the 3D embossing folder of the month, and it is absolutely gorgeous. I love this one. So let's go ahead and get started and make a card. This first one comes together surprisingly quickly, and one of the things I wanted to share with you are these new large blending brushes. These actually are not out just yet. They'll come out on the 10th. I got sent them by Spellbinders ahead of time to try them out. They are huge. They're the size of my palm. I have other large blending brushes that I'll show you in a minute. These are just different. So I went with my lightest shade of ink because I'm used to struggling with large blending brushes to lay down light color. I wanted this to fade in an ombre up the card panel. And the other brushes I have there from Altenew, and I love them, are phenomenal for laying down heavy ink. But here, right, you can see how stiff the bristles are on the Altenew brush. The ones on the Spellbinder brush are much softer, and so I was able to actually switch to a darker color and still get that really soft blend up the panel, and I love this. So I will link to those large blending brushes. They're just in the coming soon, but you get, I think, two of them for about $12, which is also a really great price point for a brush that large. I'm going over my panel with some Delicata white shimmer pigment ink. It just adds a little bit of shine and highlights those raised areas. It's less of a punch than if I'd used white pigment ink, but I do love the shine. Then this is from the Essential Floral Reflections Nested Dies, and I'm going to cut one of those out of the center of that panel, and it's going to be raised while the rest of my card is sort of recessed down into that little well that we've made. This is the largest floral from the small die of the month, and I didn't have two shades of cardstock that were close enough for me, so I cut the largest piece of that bloom out twice. I'm going to put one behind just for some added dimension. And then I have these like mini makeup pouncers. I'll link to them. I got them on Amazon, and I'm just adding a little bit of color in the places where you're going to see. So in the front bloom, I put it towards the middle so that just as I layered that smaller piece on top, you can see a bit of shadow darkness behind it. And then this other piece is going to go completely behind. You'll just see the top of it. So I didn't bother to pounce onto the bottom. You could certainly use an ink blender or just a darker shade of cardstock, but I got these for Christmas. And so I was trying them out. Then I'm using a small blending brush on these leaves just to add a little dimension. You could skip all of the ink blending. Honestly, I was just playing around and kind of seeing what I got. But I am just using one bloom on this card. You guys, sometimes I love the small and large die of the month, but I can feel like it's a lot of dies and it feels like a card that has a lot of moving pieces. But I wanted to try to simplify things for myself this go round and to show you a way to use it that's quick and easy. So I am coming in and just adding a little bit of that same color around the edges of my top panel. Again, you could skip that. The other thing I was thinking about, and I think I've mentioned this in my other video, but I haven't done it yet. I'm still pondering. Let me know what you think. I might chop down this whole thing by like 1/8 of an inch on each side so I can put a darker bluish purple around the edges. So I get that frame you get when you cut a panel to 4 by 5 1/4. I've used my sticky mat to pick up that bloom once I knew exactly where I wanted it, because I want to make sure it's going to be centered in the little window that we've cut. And then I'm just wiggling the top of the bloom to make sure it's on the top of the stem correctly. I added some foam tape all over the back of the larger panel, the one with the window in it, and I'm going to add some wet glue to give me a little bit of wiggle room. I used my 1mm foam tape, and actually if I was going to do this again, I would use my loftier tape, like a 1.5mm or a 2mm creates a larger recessed area, a deeper recessed area here. And I think I would have liked that. I'm going to do that on the next card, and you'll kind of see the difference in the shadow that that window creates. I'm adding that to my panel, and I'm nearly done. I'm going to go ahead and add some stamping. This is the Fill My Heart Sentiments. And I'm just going to use the stamp that says Happy Birthday. It's a nice large font, so it's going to stand up to our large bold bloom, and I love that. I haven't used this particular stamp before, so I'll rub my fingers across it just to prime that stamp, get any of the manufacturing oils off of it so it stamps a little bit better. And then I'm using some clear sticky ink and some silver embossing powder, and I will heat set that. Once I get that done, I'm just going to trim it out in a little rectangle, nothing fancy. And then I used that same sort of purpley blue cardstock to create a mat for it. I picked up these small Spellbinders scissors a while back and just hadn't used them yet. I have a pair that I use all the time, but when I cut foam tape, sometimes my scissors get kind of gunked up. And so these have a little coating on them so that it won't get all gunked up, supposedly, when you cut your foam tape and stuff with them. So far, I have found that to be true, but I'll let you know. I'm going to continue to use them and try them out and see how that goes. Because I was feeling daring, I also pulled out this crystal mix set of sticky backed embellishments from Spellbinders, and actually I'm going to skip through a lot of that because I never know where they go, and you don't need to see me like hem and haw for an hour. But that finishes up card number 1. This is card number 2, and we're going to use the rest of the pieces in that small die of the month. I'm creating a recessed well again, and this time I'm going to use the notched corner frames. This gives me a little more space to work with when I create my focal image. I'm tracing around the larger one with a pencil because I'm going to do some stenciling, and I want to get a sense of what you're going to be able to see once the card is assembled. This is the stencil of the month. This is new. They came out starting in December, and there are 4 to 5 stencils in a set. This one has 5, and I am just using the large bloom. So I used 2 Post-it notes just to mask off part of that. And then I'm bringing in my large blending brush again. And you can see like I'm having to go back to my ink pad a bunch because it really is great for laying down light ink. Okay, so if you're looking for a heavy layer of color, this is maybe not the best brush for that. It's just that it is so soft. Okay, but you guys, I love it. As soon as I started using it after this video was filmed, I went online to order some more and only then realized that they had not come out yet. I was still working with a product that was coming soon. So you can see them in the coming soon section. The petals for those blooms are on 2 different stencils. So on one stencil, I used sort of a bluish purple, and the other one is a slightly warmer pinky purple. Not on purpose. There was some pinky purple on my brush when I started. I didn't realize it. So I just switched up my ink colors to match what I laid down for the first one. And then this is that same white shimmer ink. I've been using this a lot lately. Like I am definitely getting my money's worth out of this ink. It was a new something for me to try a few months ago, but you can see how even if you can't quite see the ink, it lays down this beautiful shimmer. It dries well. You could heat set it, but really by the time I was done doing all of my stenciling and then assembling the other pieces of my card, that ink was dry. And I have found I struggle sometimes with shimmer inks or metallic inks that I can't get them to set and they smear. That is not the case with the Delicata. I've been very happy with them. To finish up my stenciling, I'm just going over the centers of those flowers with that same white shimmer ink, and I'm using a paper pouncer this time just because I don't want to smear that ink, if that makes sense. Like I'm pouncing over the top of the centers of the flowers. I suppose I could have done it in the other order, but I'm terrible at following directions. I didn't look at what the numbers are on the stencil. You know me. Okay, so I'm cutting out 2 different layers from the notched corner frames. This is the smaller one on this darker purple. The lighter purple is 4 by 5 1/4, and that darker purple is a little smaller than that. I didn't actually measure it. So I'm going to add glue to the lighter one on the back, just around the frame, so I can get that centered on the darker purple one. And I love this. I might have done this with the Essential Floral Reflection, the first card, but they don't nest as nicely, right? Like because of the swoopy shape of it, it gets a little wonky, so I didn't. Here I have my large sort of daisy-ish bloom, and once again, I'm just using my small pouncer. You could use a large pouncer for this, to go over all of one to create a darker shade of the same color cardstock, and then just in the center of that other one to create a little bit of a shadow coming out from the center of the flower. I'll add a little bit of shading to the leaves as well. Again, you could skip all of that. You could just use a darker shade of cardstock for that bloom. Whatever works for you, right? But I was having fun this day. I wasn't even sure I was going to turn this into a video. I thought maybe I would just post it to Instagram. I'm trying in this new year to be better about posting to my Instagram. If you haven't found me there yet, it's Sassy's LLC, just like here on YouTube. I would love to have you over there. I definitely have projects planned for the next month or so that will only be over there. So maybe check that out. This little guy. So can I tell you, we play a game called Quacks of Quedlinburg. It is like a really nerdy board game, and you're creating this potion and you're trying not to have your potion explode. And this looks just like the blooms that make your potion explode. So the whole time I was putting this one together, I was like chuckling to myself because I had just taught it to my sons. Anyway, while I was blabbing away, I finished putting the smaller blooms together, and then I'm just going to add the center to this larger bloom. Oh, I lied. There's these little dots. I cut these out of some black glitter cardstock that I thought was super fun, like a little pop of sparkle on top of that gold mirror cardstock as well. Once I get those all put together, I'm going to kind of assemble this. I just laid the frame on top of it, and I'm going to sit here and fiddle for like 20 minutes because I never know when to quit. I covered up a lot of my background once again, and I'm a little sad about that. So I'll probably make another card using that stencil where you can see more of the background. But I love these blooms. I also love this sort of bluish green, deep green cardstock as an accent here. This was a color combination that I pulled from like a Pinterest photo. And so, yeah, I kind of like how this one turned out. I'm using my sticky mat again. I'll link it below. I don't like the press and seal for this just because it flops around, and I'm already sort of a disaster in the craft room. And so this is just a little sturdier. I know it's going to hold everything in place. And I have been using the same mat for a couple of years. I will say when I first got it, it was much stickier. And so it might be worth like taking a sweatshirt and just pressing it against that shirt or a pair of pants or something just to remove a little bit of that stick and make it easier to get your paper on and off. Once I have those glued down, here I've used my slightly thicker foam tape. This one's from Altenew, so I think it's 1.5 millimeters. A little bit of wet glue to make sure I get everything centered. And then this just creates a little bit more of a shadow in that center area, and I love that. I once again am going to bring in those crystal mix rhinestones, and again I'll show you just a little bit here, but I'm coming through and just adding them all through the middle where there's a little bit of space. Some of these are teeny tiny. I don't have other gems that are quite this small, and I love that option for just that tiny little bit of sparkle. This is the Sunday Drive stamp set. It's one of my most used stamp sets of all times. It's got an occasion stamp for everything, but I'm just using happy birthday. I'm stocking up my stash. If you can't tell, there's been a lot of birthday going on this channel. Let me know what kind of cards you've been making lately. You know I make sentiments too in my emergency card kits. So I'm curious, what sentiments do you use the most? Do you have a favorite stamp set? Right? I do stamp, you guys. They're not all emergency cards. So I would love to know about it. I am using, this is just a strip die, like a sentiment strip die from one of my glimmer sets from Spellbinders. I have this little diamond magnet thing, again from Spellbinders, where I just keep my most used dies. I have my 2-inch die, my 1.25-inch die for my circles, this sentiment strip, and then like a scallop circle that I just always keep on there. And so it's easy enough to grab that when I'm pulling out a sentiment strip. I did layer this up. There are 3 of those because it's gonna kind of hang out in no man's land on the left side, and I wanted to make sure it wasn't gonna get crushed if I sent it through the mail. I'm adding some wet glue to the back, and I think I'm gonna put it right in the center. I'm gonna lay it on top of that flower, double check my placement, and then my friends, this card is done. I love this. I would love to know which of these 2 cards is your favorite. And on the first card, do you think I should cut it down to create a little bit of a frame around the outside using that darker bluish purple? The clubs for Spellbinders open on the 6th. So the day this video is coming out, you can sign up for these clubs. There is no obligation to continue. At the beginning of the next month, you have until I think the 5th to unsubscribe from a club after you see what it's going to be for the month. They're a great value. They're free shipping, and then you get 10% off the rest of your Spellbinders orders for the months. I'm not showing you all of the clubs here. These are just the ones that I really liked for this month. And then the deluxe caboodle is absolutely everything. You save 60%, free shipping, and you get the honey dipper that goes on the large die of the month. I hope this video is helpful for you. If it is, please give it a thumbs up. If you're new here, I hope you'll consider subscribing, and I will see you next time.